Hello, listening squirrels. We are on part 2 of chapter 4 called The Adventure of the Sinister Stranger. Let me get back to where we were. I was there, but I wanted to say what the chapter name was again. My dear fellow, I don't know, said Tommy cheerfully. I haven't got it, but you know that as well as I do. I should go on looking about if I were you. I like to see you and your friend Coggins playing hide and seek together. The other's face darkened. You are pleased to be flippant, Mr. Blunt. You see that square box over there? That is Coggins' little outfit, and there is vitriol, yes, vitriol and irons that can be heated in the fire so that they are red hot and burn. Tommy shook his head sadly. An error in diagnosis, he murmured. Tuppence and I labeled this adventure wrong. It's not a clubfoot story, it's a bulldog drumming, and you are the inimitable Carl Peterson. What is this nonsense you're talking? Snarled the other. Ah, said Tommy, I see you are unacquainted with the classics. A pity. Ignorant fool, you will do what we want, or will you not? Shall I tell Coggins to get out his tools and begin? Don't be so impatient, said Tommy. Of course I'll do what you want as soon as you tell me what it is. You don't suppose I want to be carved up like a filleted sole and fried on a gridiron? I loathe being hurt. Dymchurch looked at him in contempt. Gott, what cowards are these English? Common sense, my dear fellow, merely common sense. Leave the vitriol alone and let us come down to brass tacks. I want the letter. I've already told you I haven't got it. We know that. We also know who must have it, the girl. Very possibly you're right, said Tommy. She may have slipped it into her handbag when your pal Carl startled us. Oh, you do not deny? That is wise. Very good. You will write to this Tuppence, as you call her, bidding her bring the letter here immediately. I can't do that, said Tommy. The other cut in before he had finished the sentence. Ah, you can't? Well, we shall soon see. Coggins? Don't be in such a hurry, said Tommy, and do wait for the end of the sentence. I was going to say that I can't do that unless you untie my arms. Hang it all, I'm not one of those freaks who can write with their noses or their elbows. You are willing to write, then? Of course. Haven't I been telling you so all along? I'm all out to be pleasant and obliging. You won't do anything unkind to Tuppence, of course. I'm sure you won't. She's such a nice girl. We only want the letter, said Dymchurch, but there was a singularly unpleasant smile on his face. At a nod from him, the brutal Coggins knelt down and unfastened Tommy's arms. The latter swung them to and fro. The latter swung them to and fro. That's better, he said cheerfully. Will kind Coggins hand me my fountain pen? It's on the table, I think, with my other miscellaneous property. Scowling, the man brought it to him and provided a sheet of paper. Be careful what you say, Dymchurch said menacingly. We leave it to you, but failure means death, and slow death at that. In that case, said Tommy, I will certainly do my best. He reflected a minute or two, then began to scribble rapidly. How will this do? He asked, handing over the completed epistle. Dear Tuppence, can you come along at once and bring that blue letter with you? We want to decode it here and now, in haste. Francis. Francis, queried the bogus inspector with lifted eyebrows. Was that the name she called you? As you weren't at my christening, said Tommy, I don't suppose you can know whether it's my name or not, but I think the cigarette case you took from my pocket is pretty good proof that I'm speaking the truth. The other stepped over to the table and taking up the case read, "Francis from Tuppence," with a faint grin, and laid it down again. "I'm glad to find you are behaving so sensibly," he said. "Coggins, give that note to Vicely. He is on guard outside. Tell him to take it at once." The next 20 minutes passed slowly. The 10 minutes after that, more slowly still. Dymchurch was striding up and down with a face that grew darker and darker. Once he turned menacingly on Tommy. "If you have dared to double-cross us," he growled. "If we had a pack of cards here, we might have had a game of piquet to pass the time," drawled Tommy. "Women always keep one waiting. I hope you're not going to be unkind to little Tuppence when she comes." "Oh, no," said Dymchurch. "We shall arrange for you to go to the same place together." "Will you, you swine?" said Tommy under his breath. Suddenly, there was a stir in the outer office. A man whom Tommy had not yet seen poked his head in and growled something in Russian. "Good," said Dymchurch. "She is coming, and coming alone." For a moment a faint anxiety caught at Tommy's heart. The next minute he heard Tuppence's voice. "Oh, there you are, Inspector Dymchurch. I've brought the letter. Where's Francis?" With the last word she came through the door, and Vicely sprang on her from behind, clapping his hand over her mouth. Dymchurch tore the handbag from her grasp and turned over its contents in a frenzied search. Suddenly he uttered an ejaculation of delight and held up a blue envelope with a Russian stamp on it. Coggins gave a hoarse shout, and just in that moment of triumph, the door into Tuppence's own office opened noiselessly, and Inspector Harriet and 2 men armed with revolvers stepped into the room with the sharp command, "Hands up." There was no fight. The others were taken at a hopeless disadvantage. Dymchurch's automatic lay on the table, and the 2 others were not armed. "A very nice little haul," said Inspector Harriet with approval as he snapped on the last pair of handcuffs. "And we'll have more as time goes on, I hope." White with rage, Dymchurch glared at Tuppence. "You little devil," he snarled. "It was you put them on to us." Tuppence laughed. "It wasn't all my doing. I ought to have guessed, I admit, when you brought in the number 16 this afternoon, but it was Tommy's note clinched matters. I rang up Inspector Harriet, got Albert to meet him with the duplicate key of the office, and came along myself with the empty blue envelope in my bag. The letter I forwarded according to my instructions as soon as I had parted from you 2 this afternoon." But one word had caught the other's attention. "Tommy?" he queried. Tommy, who had just been released from his bonds, came towards him. "Well done, Brother Francis," he said to Tuppence, taking both her hands in his, and to Dymchurch, "As I told you, my dear fellow, you really ought to read the classics." And that is all of chapter 4. So we'll go on. Oh, was that 5? Doggone, I hope I didn't start at the wrong place. No, I guess we were on 5. I thought we were on 4. Let me just make sure I didn't skip anything. Nope. I think we're good. Oh, stomach, y'all. Oh, mercy. Hadn't eaten my lunch yet. That could be part of it. Ugh, feels yucky. Chapter 6, The Sunning Hall Mystery. Do you know where we're going to lunch today, Tuppence? Mrs. Beersford considered the question. The Ritz? She suggested hopefully. Think again. That nice little place in Soho? No. Tommy's tone was full of importance. An ABC shop. This one, in fact. He drew her deftly inside an establishment of the kind indicated and steered her to a corner marble-top table. Excellent, said Tommy with satisfaction as he seated himself. Couldn't be better. Why has this craze for the simple life come upon you? Demanded Tuppence. You see, Watson, but you do not observe. I wonder now whether one of these haughty damsels would condescend to notice us. Splendid. She drifts this way. It is true that she appears to be thinking of something else, but doubtless her subconscious mind is functioning busily with such matters as ham and eggs and pots of tea. Chop and fried potatoes, please, miss, and a large coffee, a roll and butter, and a plate of tongue for the lady. The waitress repeated the order in a scornful tone, but Tuppence leaned forward suddenly and interrupted her. No, not a chop and fried potatoes. This gentleman will have cheesecake and a glass of milk. A cheesecake and a milk, said the waitress with even deeper scorn, if that were possible. Still thinking of something else, she drifted away again. That was uncalled for, Tommy said coldly, but I'm right, am I not? You are the old man in the corner. Where's your piece of string? Tommy drew a long twisted mesh of string from his pocket and proceeded to tie a couple of knots in it. Complete to the smallest detail, he murmured. You made a small mistake in ordering your meal, though. Women are so literal-minded, said Tommy. If there's one thing I hate, it's milk to drink. And cheesecakes are always so yellow and bilious looking. Be an artist, said Tuppence. Watch me attack my cold tongue. Jolly good stuff, cold tongue. Now then, I'm all ready to be Miss Polly Burton. Tie a large knot and begin. First of all, said Tommy, speaking in a strictly unofficial capacity, let me point out this. Business is not too brisk lately. If business does not come to us, we must go to business, apply our minds to one of the great public mysteries of the moment, which brings me to the point, the Sunning Hall mystery. Ah, said Tuppence with deep interest, the Sunning Hall mystery. Tommy drew a crumpled piece of newspaper from his pocket and laid it on the table. That is the last portrait of Captain Cecil as it appeared in the Daily Leader. Just so, said Tuppence. I wonder someone doesn't sue those newspapers sometimes. You can see it's a man, and that's all. When I said the Sunning Hall mystery, I should have said the so-called Sunning Hall mystery, went on Tommy rapidly. A mystery to the police, perhaps, but not to an intelligent mind. Tie another knot, said Tuppence. I don't know how much of the case you remember, continued Tommy quietly. All of it, said Tuppence, but don't let me cramp your style. It was just over 3 weeks ago, said Tommy, that gruesome discovery was made on the famous golf links. 2 members of the club who were enjoying an early round were horrified to find the body of a man lying face downwards on the 7th tee. Even before they turned him over, they had guessed him to be Captain Cecil. a well-known figure on the links and who always wore a golf coat of a peculiarly bright blue color. Captain Cecil was often seen out on the links early in the morning practicing, and it was thought at first that he had been suddenly overcome by some form of heart disease. But examination by a doctor revealed the sinister fact that he had been murdered, stabbed to the heart with a significant object, a woman's hat pin. He was also found to have been dead at least 12 hours. That put an entirely different complexion on the matter, and very soon some interesting facts came to light. Practically, the last person to see Captain Cecil alive was his friend and partner, Mr. Hollaby, of the Porcupine Assurance Company. And he told his story as follows. Cecil and he had played round earlier in the day. After tea, the former suggested that they should play a few more holes before it got too dark to see. Hollaby ascended. Cecil seemed in good spirits and was in excellent form. There is a public footpath that crossed the links, and just as they were playing up to the 6th green, Hollaby noticed a woman coming along. She was very tall and dressed in brown, but he did not observe her particularly, and Cecil, he thought, did not notice her at all. The footpath in question crosses in front of the 7th tee, continued Tommy. The woman had passed along this and was standing at the farther side as though waiting. Captain Cecil was the first to reach the tee as Mr. Hollaby was replacing the pin in the hole. As the latter came towards the tee, he was astonished to see Cecil and the woman talking together. As he came nearer, they both turned abruptly, Cecil calling over his shoulder, "Shan't be a minute." The two of them walked off side by side, still deep in earnest conversation. The footpath there leaves the course, and passing between two narrow hedges of neighboring gardens, comes out on the road to Windlesham. Captain Cecil was as good as his word. He reappeared within a minute or two, much to Hollaby's satisfaction. As two other players were coming up behind them, the light was failing rapidly. They drove off, and at once Hollaby noticed that something had occurred to upset his companion. Not only did he foozle his drive badly, but his face was worried and his forehead creased in a big frown. He hardly answered his companion's remarks, and his golf was atrocious. Evidently something had occurred to put him completely off his game. They played that hole and the 8th, and then Captain Cecil declared abruptly that the light was too bad and he was off home. Just at that point, there is another of those narrow slips leading to the Windlesham Road, and Captain Cecil departed that way, which was a shortcut to his home, a small bungalow on the road in question. The other two players came up, a Major Bernard and Mr. Lecky, and to them Hollaby mentioned Captain Cecil's sudden change of manner. They also had seen him speaking to the woman in brown, but had not been near enough to see her face. All three men wondered what she could have said to upset their friend to that extent. They returned to the clubhouse together, and as far as page got turned. As far as was known at the time, were the last two people to see Captain Cecil alive. The day was a Wednesday, and on Wednesdays, cheap tickets to London are issued. The man and wife who ran the small bungalow were up in town according to custom and did not return until the late train. They entered the bungalow as usual and reported their master to be in his room asleep. Mrs. Cecil, his wife, was away on a visit. The murder of the captain was a 9 days' wonder. Nobody could suggest a motive for it. The identity of the tall woman in brown was eagerly discussed, but without result. The police were, as usual, blamed for their supineness most unjustly, as time was to show. For a week later, a girl called Doris Evans was arrested and charged with the murder of Captain Anthony Cecil. The police had to work upon a strand of fair hair caught in the dead man's fingers, and a few threads of flame-colored wool caught on one of the buttons of his blue coat. Diligent inquiries at the railway station and elsewhere had elicited the following facts. A young girl dressed in a flame-colored coat and skirt had arrived by train that evening about 7 o'clock and had asked the way to Captain Cecil's house. The same girl had reappeared again at the station 2 hours later. Her hat was awry and her hair tousled, and she seemed in a state of great agitation. She inquired about the trains back to town and was continually looking over her shoulder as though afraid of something. Our police force is in many ways very wonderful with this wonderful. Darn. I'll spot again. Okay. With this slender evidence to go upon, they managed to track down the girl and identify her as one Doris Evans. She was charged with murder and cautioned that anything she might say could be used against her, but she nevertheless persisted in making a statement. And this statement she repeated again in detail without any substantial variation at the subsequent proceedings. Her story was this: she was a typist by profession and had made friends one evening in a cinema with a well-dressed man who declared he had taken a fancy to her. His name, he told her, was Anthony, and he suggested that she should come down to his bungalow at Sunninghill. She had no idea then or at any other time that he had a wife. It was arranged between them that she should come down the following Wednesday, the day you will remember when his servants would be absent and his wife away from home. In the end, he told her that his full name was Anthony Cecil, and gave her the name of his house. She duly arrived at the bungalow on the evening in question and was greeted by Cecil, who had just come in from the links. Though he professed himself delighted to see her, the girl declared that from the first his manner was strange and different. A half-acknowledged fear sprang up in her, and she wished fervently that she had not come. After a simple meal, which was all ready and prepared, Cecil suggested going out for a stroll. The girl consented. He took her out of the house, down the road, and along the slip onto the golf course, and then suddenly, just as they were crossing the 7th tee, he seemed to go completely mad. Drawing a revolver from his pocket, he brandished it in the air, declaring that he had come to the end of his tether. "Everything must go. I'm ruined, done for, and you shall go with me. I shall shoot you first, and then myself. They will find our bodies here in the morning, side by side together in death." And so on, a lot more. He had hold of Doris Evans by the arm, and she, realizing she had to do. Wait a minute. Realizing she had to do with a madman, made frantic efforts to free herself, or failing that, to get the revolver away from him. They struggled together, and in that struggle, he must have torn out a piece of her hair and got the wool of her coat entangled on a button. Finally, with a desperate effort, she freed herself and ran for her life across the golf links. Ever heard of golf links? Expecting every minute to be shot down with a revolver bullet. She fell twice, tripping over the heather, but eventually regained the road to the station and realized she was not being pursued. That is the story that Doris Evans tells, and from which she had never varied. She strenuously denies that she ever struck at him with a hat pin in self-defense. A natural enough thing to do under the circumstances, though, and one which may well be the truth. In support of her story, a revolver has been found in the furze bushes near where the body was lying. It had not been fired. Doris Evans has been sent for trial, but the mystery still remains a mystery. If her story is to be believed, who was it who stabbed Captain Cecil? The other woman? The tall woman? In brown, whose appearance so upset him? So far, no one has explained her connection with the cause. She appears out of space suddenly. On the footpath across the links. She disappears along the slip, and no one ever hears of her again. Who was she? A local resident? A visitor from London? If so, did she come by car or by train? There's nothing remarkable about her except her height. No one seems to be able to describe her appearance. She could not have been Doris Evans, for Doris Evans is small and fair, and moreover was just then arriving at the station. The wife, suggested Tuppence. What about the wife? A very natural suggestion, but Mrs. Cecil is also a small woman, and besides, Mr. Hollaby knows her well by sight. And there seems no doubt that she was really away from home. One further development has come to light. The Porcupine Assurance Company is in liquidation. The accounts reveal the most daring misappropriation of funds. The reasons for Captain Cecil's wild words to Doris Evans are now quite apparent. For some years past, he must have been systematically embezzling. Neither Mr. Hollaby nor his son had any idea of what was going on. They are practically ruined. The case stands like this. Oh, go away. Captain Cecil was on the verge of discovery and ruin. Suicide would be a natural solution, but the nature of the wound rules that theory out. Who killed him? Was it Doris Evans? Was it the mysterious woman in brown? Tommy paused, took a sip of milk, made a wry face, and bit cautiously at the cheesecake. "Of course," he murmured, "I saw at once where the hitch in this particular case lay." And just where the police were going astray. Yes, said Tuppence eagerly. Tommy shook his head sadly. I wish I did, Tuppence. I wish I did. Tuppence, it's dead easy being the old man in the corner up to a certain point. But the solution beats me. Who did murder the beggar? I don't know. He took some more newspaper cuttings out of his pocket. Further exhibits, Mr. Hollaby, his son, Mrs. Cecil, Doris Evans. Tuppence pounced on the list and looked at it for some time. She didn't murder him anyway, she remarked at last. Not with hairpins. Not with a hat pin. Go away. Why this certainty? A Lady Molly touch. She's got bobbed hair. Only one woman in 20 uses hat pins nowadays. Anyway, long hair or short. Hats fit tight and pull on. There's no need for such a thing. Still, she might have had one by her. My dear boy, we don't keep them as heirlooms. What on earth should she have brought a hat pin down to Sunning Hall for? Then it must have been the other woman, the woman in brown. I wish she hadn't been tall, then she could have been the wife. I always suspect wives who are away at the time and so couldn't have had anything to do with it. If she found her husband carrying on with that girl, it would be quite natural for her to go with them. To go for him with a hat pin. I shall have to be careful, I see, remarked Tommy. And I'm going to stop there. Getting tired. I love y'all. Have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow live at 5 and in the YouTube streets. And if you're seeing this around 7-ish, which is when I'm recording it Sunday night, Kelly may be on Crochet Adventures with Kelly or Kelly's Crochet Adventures. Love y'all. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Bye-bye.